Hi, everybody. I'm the co-founder of Digital Leadership Associates, and I'm also the author of the book, Social Selling, Techniques to Influence Buyers and Changemakers, bestseller on Amazon. With me today, I've got Richard Young. He is the sales director at Bullhorn CRM, and he's going to talk about social selling. So I'm just inviting Richard to join us, and he should be here in a moment. Richard's been using social for like years, and it's going to be a great discussion in terms of the way that he uses it. And here he comes. Hello, Richard. How you doing?
Hi, Tim. I'm doing very well, thank you. Hopefully you can hear me properly.
I can, yes, perfectly, yeah. Welcome, Richard. Why don't you introduce yourself and let people know who you are, what you do, and things like that.
Absolutely. Well, my name is Richard Young. Twitter handle is @Richard_Y, so connect with me on that if you'd like to. And CRM UK for on LinkedIn, LinkedIn as well. I have been involved in the CRM landscape for, I think, about 22 years now. So
when we were talking, it was like you said, like 1998 or something.
Yeah, technically slightly before that. Yeah. So helped to introduce CRM as a concept into the UK. And in actual fact, even from those early days, I was using the pre-runners to social to turn around and engage with people.
Right.
The difference then and now was the social elements you had then were very much for either US people specifically or techies, basically.
Right.
Because not everybody had access to it. The internet was new and all that sort of shiny stuff. And now it's much more widely accessible, which actually for me makes it really useful because I can get in contact with the business people.
Yes.
Who's actually the people I want to get a hold of. So, yeah, so I've been in the CRM game for a very long time, helping people to realize the strategic business objectives for the company with what they need to deliver within the CRM marketplace.
Okay.
Part of that obviously includes customer experience, which social can be part of, etc.
Yes.
And on a day-to-day basis, I leverage social as a tool to help me engage with people and to drive new business, essentially.
Yeah, because when I got hold of when I contacted you about, can we do this webinar and can we talk about social? It was and I said, so can you use and you said, but I use social all the time. And I have done for years, and sorry, what's like new about this? And so one of the things that a lot of people that watch, they're kind of interested in some of the how people are using it and how they can actually replicate that and how they can get success.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you could talk through what it is, what's your average day in terms of social? Obviously, don't take eight hours about it, but what are the things that you do when you open up your Mac or your laptop and start, and how do you prospect and how do you build business?
Okay, so I guess the first principle to talk about is Hinge Marketing have a great concept called Visible Expert.
Right.
And that's the principle which I've adopted throughout my entire career,
okay.
Either as a CTO for a CRM company or a consultant doing the client-facing work and the execution side, or as indeed as a salesperson, or in fact as the MD of my own company previously.
Okay, so this is about being visible just out in the marketplace.
Absolutely.
People basically can contact you.
Yeah, so if you're not known, you're not established, and as an individual, you don't have a brand, then it's very difficult for people to turn around and say, Richard Young, who I'm connected with on LinkedIn or Twitter or Facebook even, or wherever it happens to be, or even traditional in the pub, if somebody talks about CRM, then I want to be recognized as the person you should be speaking to.
Right.
And that's the first step, really, for myself.
And making it easy for people to contact you as well.
Absolutely. So if you went to my LinkedIn profile, the first thing you'll see in the top line is quick contact.
Number and your contact details, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because don't make it difficult. And, I speak to a number of people and they might turn around and say, well, I don't want to put my email on there because I might get spam. Well, to be quite frank, I have a spam filter for that.
Yeah.
And it's easy just to do the one click, no, it's spam.
Yeah.
So it's not challenging to have that on there. And it's the same with, I've got my mobile phone number on there as well. I very, very rarely get spam calls from people who get it from my LinkedIn. I get people who will call me and say, Richard, I've just seen your latest post on LinkedIn that resonates with my business issues.
Right.
Can we discuss this? And then we talk about it. And that's fantastic. That's the call I want to take.
Yeah.
The spam calls I get on my phone are because I signed up to something on the web, some newspaper, and somebody decides that because I downloaded a white paper means that obviously I'm going to buy their £500,000 system, etc.
Yeah.
That's spam, So I make it easy for people to do contact. I make it very recognizable for people to say, this person does this job. So for me, it's about focus.
Okay. And I think that's what you would expect for salespeople to do. That they own a territory. It's you're managing director of that area. You know what's going on in that area, and you need to present yourself as being the expert in your field. So in effect, you are making, because we all salespeople, we get up in the morning and we prospect, but we're also putting ourselves in that position so we're getting inbound as well.
Yeah, that's right. And of course, the concept of a salesperson going out and doing cold calls is, salespeople don't like it. Nobody likes receiving those calls either. So the more I can generate through natural, soft, inbound conversations, the better it is for me. Right. And if you ask any salesperson, a referral is worth so much more than just getting somebody on the phone and having that initial conversation through a cold call. So if you can get somebody who turns around and says, okay, yeah, actually, I know the guy you need to speak to. That's Richard. I've known him for a while. Go talk to him. He'll give you good advice.
Okay, so we started off. We started there with the principle being you always are someone that people can contact and be visible in your marketplace. So what's the next?
Yep. Okay, so the next thing is, of course, you then got to turn around and you've got to work it. Ultimately, if you're poor at sales offline, you're going to be poor at sales online. Right. That's the reality. It's not a magic bullet. It's not going to fix things for you. It's just another tool set that the salesperson has and should be leveraging in the modern day and age, particularly if you're in more complex B2B sales or anything which is relationship orientated. They should do this.
Okay.
So first thing in the morning, I'm on the train. Not using a Mac, not using a PC, I'm on my phone.
Right.
So I've got Twitter on there so I can reply to some people. I've got Facebook.
And you go through your Twitter on the phone and okay.
Yep. So I'm using Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook on the phone. Facebook is very good, particularly some of the groups, for getting correspondence and contacts. Right. Who are looking for information, etc. Okay. So it's not just about traditional Twitter or LinkedIn.
Because the objection I often get with salespeople is that Facebook is for family and friends, and it's like there's a wall between that and the professional life. But you see the two spilling over, and
unless you're turning around and publishing highly personal pictures on your Facebook page. Yeah. Which I tend not to do because I don't. If they're personal, then they are personal. There are security settings so you can make it just for family if it's a picture of the kids, etc. If you want to, but to a certain extent, it's not just presenting the company and running through the process steps that everybody says, because that's about being a robot.
Right.
Doesn't work for me as an individual. Doesn't work for my customers because they can't relate to me, and people need to be able to relate to me. They need to be emotionally invested in what I do and who I am.
Okay.
Because it's about relationships.
Yeah. So when so you're going through Twitter and LinkedIn, and are you looking out for people and going, that person could be interesting to talk to? So in Facebook, you're in a Facebook group and you go, and say that person is that's useful, or is that what you're doing in the morning in terms of searching for and sifting for more contacts and
so yes and no is the answer. So you've got a number of people who followed you, a number of people who retweeted you and done stuff like that. So in which case, the first thing is, you can spend 5-10 minutes just turning around replying to them. If you've got a Twitter list, which is great, of your prospects or your enterprise clients, for example, you can turn around and like some of that stuff. Now, I don't deal with the social media teams of organizations.
Right. Yeah.
But I still like and retweet some of their things because actually somebody in their organization will recognize it and go, oh, Richard has done this.
Okay.
And that's good for me because you know what? The more contacts I have in an organization, the easier it is for me to work those relationships.
Right.
So it's all helps. And if you think of it from, well, you know what? This takes me a couple of minutes. It's value add.
Okay.
It's giving something to them. So that works really well.
Yeah.
Second thing is, so you want to keep an eye on those lists, etc. You're looking for nudges to say something's happened. So, for example, I'm in the CRM world.
Yeah.
If somebody buys another organization, I know it's likely to be more licenses coming my way because they're going to have to merge that organization into my organization.
Okay, so you're looking for mergers and acquisitions.
Mergers and acquisitions are great. Reports that come out. So, for example, I've got a customer at the moment who have had a slow growth rate, lower than anticipated. So, in which case, there's a conversation to be had there about why has that happened, how can we help, etc.
Right.
So that really works very, very well for me. So it's all about those notifications. The second aspect is trying to connect with just more people, almost at random. So rather than turning around and necessarily saying, I'll only target the managing director of firms. You know, the managing director normally has somebody else who runs their Twitter account most of the time. What I'm trying to do is connect and have stepping stones to where I want to get.
Is that so you're going wider and deeper within the accounts?
Because that's easy with social to do.
Okay, yes.
And I'm trying to build up, it's particularly from an enterprise play, I'm trying to understand how the organization is made up. Okay. I'm trying to see things like, so if you go in LinkedIn now, what you can see on the insights page, if you've got the premium edition, is the number of employees which are joining, and it's a growth curve. So if that's declining, then you know they've got revenue issues, because if it's declining, they're getting rid of staff. So the conversations I might have with an enterprise customer will rapidly change about trying to generate more business from existing accounts, trying to protect accounts, so preventing account churn, etc.
Okay.
Making people more efficient and effective. Yeah. If you suddenly see more people coming on board and it's quite a good jump, let's say it's a 20% growth, you might turn around to the organization and say, is your growth for your employees keeping in line with the actual revenue you're bringing in? How can you accurately project those forecasts?
Right.
How are you doing that? What's your process there?
Okay, so that's really looking at the data that's in LinkedIn on the company, using that as insight into those companies. Okay, good.
Yeah, because I have to establish who reports to who. I need to know where I need to get to, and it's not easy necessarily to go straight to that level. You can try, but often you get rebuffed. So in which case, I'm looking to multiple routes.
Yeah, I had breakfast with Brent Adamson, the co-author of the Sales Challenger, last week.
Yeah,
and he says nobody sells at sea level, and because let me just we all say we go in at sea level and that's where we work, but actually we spend most of our time one or two levels below that, and what we're doing is we're looking for the people with the influence. And they don't necessarily have authority. And ultimately what happens is we find those people and we get them to take us to the sea. Is that what
I describe them as mobilizers and champions, which are not necessarily the same.
If you read Brent Adamson's, the second book, the Challenger Customer, then they call them mobilizers. In my book, we call them change makers, but yes.
Yeah, same concept. It's basically you're looking for somebody who can actually drive the conversation forward.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily always the champion, but ideally, if they're both, that's fantastic.
Yes.
But you need to have both roles covered. Quite often, the CEO isn't always even the decision maker, particularly now. And if we're looking at a post-Brexit environment, that's become more so, where it's very much community driven. So, you've got a team which has been allocated to this. All of them have to more or less agree. All of them have different agendas. All of them have different needs from the system. So to get that collaboration is absolutely key.
The way I always used to visualize it in my head was that there's going to be some meeting and they're all going to sit around a table and someone's going to say, right, we've looked at product A and product B. Who's for product A? And a number of people put their hands up. And who's for product B? And a number of people put their hands up. And our job as salespeople is to make sure that when they go, it's basically everybody put their hands up for our product. And it should be, an unanimous decision. I know I'm simplifying it, but that's generally the way
I
kind of think of it in my head. And I know that LinkedIn, and just question to you, LinkedIn is saying that in terms of enterprise software deals, there's at least 4.8 people involved. CEB, who Brent works for, have got some research coming out in October where it's 6.7%. 6.7.
I'd say it's about 7 is the last statistic I saw.
Yeah. And for me, well, that's actually the same as always been for 30 years. The thing is, in enterprise deals, there's a lot of people involved. So it's that you were talking about.
Yeah, and you need to understand who they are, who they report into. And in actual fact, when you're leveraging social for this as well, what you need to know is who are they managing. So if you're looking at the enterprise level organization, quite often, let's think about LAMP accounts, large account management process, strategic accounts, whatever you describe it as. They're dealing with very specific finite number of people. So it's not only enough to understand the organization you're dealing with, but their counterparts in the other organization as well, because their issues, let's say, for example, you're going to be dealing with John Lewis as one of your key accounts. You will then turn around and see how John Lewis did, because if John Lewis aren't doing very well, you're not going to do very well.
Yeah.
So therefore, you have to look at both sides of the equation, and you can get a lot of that type of information from their connections that they have on LinkedIn, on Twitter, etc. And you then use those connections. You connect the dots, and that's your job as a salesperson. And then you can work out what the issues are going to be. And then when you turn around and get to that committee, in actual fact, while there may be 7 people in the room who are going to make the decision, there's many more than that who are actually going to influence the person who sits at that table.
Yeah.
And you want one-to-one meetings with each of those if you can do. Because if you get too many people in a room, the person who shouts loudest gets listened to.
Yeah. And you need to cover all of those bases. If there's 7 people in the room, you need to have met them. And I've sat in too many account reviews where there's I've spoken to Fred and it's like so and they completely understand what the proposition is. Oh yeah. It's like no, it's like no. You really need to know that they actually understand it and they're going to vote for you and. Because when we talked, I mean, you just went, because I said, how much of your revenue is associated with like social? Are you seeing a 20% lift or a 30% lift? And you just said, everything I do is social.
Yeah.
I every deal that you work on, you use social.
Yes. So every single deal I turn around and leverage social networks to turn around and see who works there, how many employees they've got, do they have growth issues, do they have declining revenues, even going to things like Glassdoor, for example, which is a company review site and recruitment type tool. I will look in that and see how well rated they are, because that gives you an indication and perception of the company as well, particularly for larger companies. And you quite often get some insights there. And that's what I'm looking for, is those insights into what's happening inside that organization.
Right.
So then I can turn around
it's
and use that.
Yes, it's the pressures that they're under I mean, everybody has from a sales perspective, we're always looking at people's personal wins.
Yeah.
But it's the day-to-day issues that they're kind of facing that, maybe the shops are closing or something like that. And that has an impact on right through the organization, or they're expanding.
Yeah. And, both come with their own pressures and their own issues. And it's tapping into that so you can present your value propositions in relation to what their pain points are effectively. And the social gives me the ability to try and identify what some of those pains are without having to ask them. So I come in looking like the expert, because I can turn around and say, I think you've got these sort of issues.
Yeah. And question to them, is that right? And they'll probably go yes or no. And there's also, rather than doing the thing that we probably did all 10 years ago, where we just said,
what keeps you awake at night?
And they would tell us. Well, nowadays, I get people coming to me and said, I had someone yesterday on LinkedIn saying, can you tell me what your business issues are? And I sort of said, well, can you not read my LinkedIn profile?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, and and there's no excuse for it. This is in my book, this is poor sales work by not leveraging social these days. So, I was always taught that you had to do your homework. You had to do it well, and that when you go into the sales process will pay you dividends, because they then appreciate the work you put in. If you do not check them on social, you are not doing your homework properly, and it is that simple. And it's that straightforward. So if you're not going to do your homework, you're probably not going to be a brilliant salesperson. If you are going to do your homework, you are going to leverage social. So if you look at a lot of the statistics that are out there available on social at the moment, they say the best performing salespeople leverage social.
Hmm.
I don't
And
think
are
it's
you
just
spending
because of social, but
obviously you're doing other things, but it makes it sound like you're doing a lot of you work in LinkedIn. I mean, how often, I get asked, do I need to spend 20 minutes in LinkedIn? I mean, I probably spend a quarter of my day in LinkedIn when I'm prospecting.
yeah,
I'm looking for all kinds of bits and pieces and that person and all that. And I'm working a particular account at the moment, and I've just found somebody in Germany that is actually, which I wouldn't have found them without actually working through LinkedIn and seeing the people they're connected to and that sort of stuff. And that's, for me, it's about getting that base covered, because that person in Germany could actually be really important, and I don't know that.
Yes, that's entirely. Particularly if you're dealing with larger accounts, it's a global issue. So I've got one management consultancy I'm working at the moment, who they have contact. So in the CRM world, what tends to happen is it's never the decision maker who makes contact. It's always somebody who's relatively junior, where the boss or the boss's boss turns around to somebody and says, we need a CRM system, or our CRM isn't working, we need a new one, or user adoption is terrible, what can we do about it? Then somebody junior, sales admin, whatever it is, an intern possibly, is given the job of finding the CRM solution, or recommending 3, 4, 5, however many it's going to be, to the team to say, these are the ones we should look at. They call me, they say, Richard, I found your, they've gone into Google, they've done a search, my name comes up, fantastic. And said, I need a CRM solution, tell me about the product you're doing. And I always turn around and say, that's fantastic, I can tell you about my product, but let me ask you, what do you need to achieve? What's the problem you have? Because if I turn around and say, my product is this and it has these features, I'm in a transactional sale. It's a race to the bottom on pricing. So from a social point of view, I want to know, from a sales point of view, I want to know what their key triggers are. That person doesn't know.
No.
All they care about is price and is it easy to use.
They've been told to put it on a list.
Yeah, they don't even have a list most of the time. It's, go find some software. So they care about price because they know their boss will turn around and say, well, how much is it? They care about ease of use because it's because they're going to have to actually use the software. So actually, of those things, they only really care about ease of use. But how do you do a value proposition around ease of use? And it's
the CRM system is a strategic decision.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be something that you're going to use for 5 years,
So if I'm going to justify, a £500,000 spend, how am I going to do that? Well, I'm not going to do it on ease of use. So I need to find out, who should I be speaking to? So whilst I'm on the phone and asking these questions and they're trying to work out actually what the criteria is, I'm immediately onto LinkedIn, sometimes onto Twitter and Facebook as well, but mostly LinkedIn. And I'm looking up the organization and I'm looking for the senior people. I'm looking who she reports to. Okay, so this conversation is going to go back to David. What's David's criteria? And I've used his specific name. Oh, do you know David? Let's just move on from that question and not answer it directly. Yes, I do. Oh, he thinks I do. And, and then it's like, okay, so this is the conversation. This is what we need to talk about. And I can see the organization. I know the makeup. And I know, hopefully, if I'm a good salesperson, I know issues that type of company is going to have. And I can see some bits from their LinkedIn profiles as well. So I can start turning around and saying, so I think you may have some of these issues. Do you find this is right? So does your boss tend to micromanage you? He's always asking about what's going on in your accounts. Oh, yeah, he does. Yeah. That's actually not his fault, or her fault. It's probably because they don't have visibility into what's going on in the company and they're getting pressure from above. And you just start to build up that picture. And they're like, oh, yeah, that works. And then they get it. So it's the educational part for them as well, because they don't know what to build it on. And of course, what I'm actually doing is I'm reframing their questions to something which aligns with where I can create value propositions. And I can do that because all of a sudden I know people in the organization, or at least this person believes I do at this point in time, and I've got some insights from their LinkedIn profiles.
And it's, and if that person is actually going out and getting information on those organizations, they're also in a situation that they're probably going to go back to the boss with a shortlist, but they don't want to look stupid. So if they go back to the boss with a list, and I mean, all salespeople will ask for a meeting, and all salespeople schedule a meeting with the next person. But they're only going to give it the meetings, or they're going to only act as the gatekeeper to people that have had a synergy with them, understood the business issues as you described. Because if they're going to go, right, if I put this person in front of the boss, I'm going to look good. If I'm going to put this idiot in front of the boss, I'm going to look bad. So you're, I mean, as salespeople, we will always ask for that meeting, but you need to be making sure that I working back years ago, the most important person in the organization was the personal assistant or the secretary, and
gives you access.
And again, this is the same person. It's about giving you access to the next step, and earning the right and the trust for that person's. You need to meet Richard. He kind of knows what he's talking about. He's really helped me. He looks like a leader in the field. He's not going to come in and be Mr. Super Smooth sales guy, because he knows CRM. And you're more likely for me, you're more likely to get forward by doing that, regardless how brilliant you are as a salesperson, whether you are a super.
Yeah, it's about credibility, trust, and de-risking that conversation they've got to have. Because if they turn around and promote somebody, and actual fact, the further you go up the tree, the more important de-risking becomes. They want to believe that they've got somebody who's going to be able to talk to the organization well at the right level, so that if they introduce you to their boss, you're not going to make them look a fool.
Yes.
And that's really what it's about. So it's about de-risking at that point in time. And again, all of that, it's not just social, but social really helps. And it is your homework for understanding what's taking place. So another thing I do on that, if I'm going into an enterprise account, is I'll look at the enterprise account, I'll look at all the senior people, and I will visit each single person's LinkedIn profile.
Right.
Because, of course, LinkedIn then pings them and says, oh, this person looked at your profile. X number of people will then look back, and if you've got a good LinkedIn profile, it then shows you that you're an expert in your field and talks a little bit about your product and how you can resolve issues that they may have. So that effectively is an advertising piece for your company. It's not your CV, which is what most people turn around and use it for. It is a landing page to get your prospects to go to, because that's one of the first things that when they're checking you out, will look at. So don't make it a CV. You need to make it about your value proposition and what you want them to do. What do you want them to do next? Do you want them to call you? How do they do it? Well, you better have a phone number.
It's about building that credibility to say, I know about these things. I've worked with organizations similar to you. You actually, yes, I mean, customers always say they have unique problems, but I understand the issues that you're having, and I can solve them. And that's and I'm a human being as well, and all of that needs to go on your LinkedIn profile rather than I'm a quota killer. And because while I appreciate salespeople who crush their quota, I actually want my problem solved.
Yeah. So it needs to be about what issues do you resolve, what's taking place, what do you need to do, and that is fundamentally different. And that's why you should use the LinkedIn blog posts. And it doesn't need to be long-winded. I mean, you've got some fantastic ones, and yours are yours are longer than mine, for example. But I'm you know what? I'm not a born writer. That's not my job. That's not what I do. I rarely have time for it. So I've got short to the point.
So we're running on. We're running out of time. But a blog post is a really important thing. So as a salesperson, because all salespeople say, I don't have time for this. We will write. My company will write blog posts for salespeople if they want.
Yep, absolutely.
But as a sales guy who doesn't have time, how do you do it?
Right. So the first thing is I would turn around and recommend finding a good ghostwriter that gets you, that you can communicate with, because actually, that's you, because actually that works really, really well, because then what you're able to do is do a brain dump of your idea, what you want to say. And if you work with them on a regular basis, they get the voice that you want to portray it to as well. So I don't like fluff. I want to be fairly no nonsense. So that's my style.
So usually what I would recommend is that salesperson, say, goes into a meeting with John Lewis. They go and see the chief financial officer of John Lewis. I know you don't normally call on CFOs, but they go and see the CFO, and the CFO says, these are the 5 business issues that are affecting me right now. And they come out, and what they do is that they would ring up a me and say, I've just had this meeting, and I don't need to know the name of the company. I don't need to know the name of the person. But you just need to relay to me what the 5 business issues are in retail, and I will put that out as a short form blog post.
Yeah, or in actual fact, it can be, these are the 5 issues that they've got, and this is how we're going to resolve them for them. Great blog post. And equally, it can be, just had this really frustrating prospect. I've gone in, I've turned around, I've done my pitch, and they just don't get it, and they're wrong because of. And that all equally, it's like where organizations are going wrong, and how they need to move from A to B. Because quite often it's that cognitive jump between A and B that people struggle to do. And actually being able to give them that pathway really works well. Because then
I was at a presentation the other week, and there was someone there, and they basically came straight on, and they started swearing. And
wow.
and I was like taken aback, but they
I have seen some of those.
Yeah. They work for Gary V, so it's kind of like probably in so I just wrote a very short form blog post, profanity, yes or no, and I put it on LinkedIn. Of course, there's a big discussion going on about it. But that's one of those things where you see something. It's not necessarily these are the business issues, but quite often, actually, you can write blog posts. You just lost a piece of business, and that project will go wrong. Because they haven't invested in this, or they haven't thought about this. You told them about it, but the other vendor said, no, don't worry about it. That's still that even though you lost that business, you can actually create a blog post and say, look, top 5 things you need, top mistakes that people make in CRM implementations or something like that.
Absolutely. Or how your decision criteria is wrong.
Yeah.
Or why you're getting your most junior member of staff is a strategic tool you should be adopting.
Yes.
Who doesn't understand what you need to achieve. It's all that sort of thing. And I think if you're talking about from the sales perspective, if you're writing the blog as a salesperson and you want to become a sales manager or a sales director, then of course some of the things you can talk about is best practice within sales. Because of course, it's not just your prospects that you're pitching to, it's your boss for that next career jump as well. And part of that digital visibility really begins to count more and more. Obviously, depending on the type of industry you're in and how your company operates, but it does you as an individual no harm whatsoever. So when you get a bad phone call from somebody trying to pitch you an idea, so I had a terrible one from an online meeting company recently, and it's just, if you looked at my LinkedIn profile, you'd know I'm the wrong person to contact. I don't have anything to do with the stuff you're talking about. So why are you calling me? Well, because you've bought a list and I'm on the list, so therefore you're calling me. No. This is how not to approach senior execs. This is not how you should not approach prospects.
You only have
do your homework.
8 hours in a day, so you only need. So why are you wasting your time calling me? Go and call somebody who you can actually sell to. I mean, it's basic qualification. Time is actually a limited resource. You use it.
Yeah, it's the most limited resource you've got. Yeah, it's and that's fairly common. So you can do a blog post about that. You can turn around and be in the customer service checkout queue at Sainsbury's or Waitrose, wherever. You can say, why is it a bad customer experience, and what difference would be for them if they had a better customer experience. There's lots of things in everyday life you can turn around and utilize. The bit I think most people struggle with really is putting pen to paper. And that's challenging, particularly if it's not what you do on a daily basis. I mean, I've got tools like Grammarly.com, which is a great tool for grammar checking and spelling, etc., to make sure it actually is in English rather than what I would necessarily write straight away, which helps. But equally, if you are really push for talent, particularly if you're an exec, I would turn around and say it is more cost effective to turn around and get a ghostwriter.
Brilliant.
And still your ideas, still what you want to say. It's just somebody's doing the grunt work.
Okay, brilliant. Richard, thank you very much. We're at 35 minutes, so bit longer than normal. Can you just remind everybody where they can get hold of you and your contact details?
Absolutely. So my name is Richard Young. I work for Bullhorn CRM. Telephone number is 07768 876 221. Always happy to take a call if you've got CRM questions. Email is r.young@bullhorn.com, and would love to connect you on Twitter. Always tweet to me, Richard.
And you'll accept LinkedIn requests, and you're more than happy for people to approach you and stuff. And
yeah,
you're a mentor and stuff as well. And so yeah. Okay.
I believe all these things start with a conversation, so it's good.
Okay,
good to
thank
talk.
you, Richard, and good luck. Happy selling.
You're welcome. You too.